Okay, so imagine this, right? You're living the California dream in Solana Beach.
Yeah.
Life is good. You got your family, friends, the sunshine, the beach,
Ah,
and then wham, you find something that just flips your whole world upside down.
okay.
Hundreds of nude photos of you
Oh, wow.
on your stepdad's computer.
Oh, that.
Yeah, talk about a plot twist.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It sounds like something out of like a crazy Hollywood movie or something.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is real life, and it's the story we're diving into today. The case of Jade Jenks.
So this case, it's a wild one. Family secrets, conflicting stories, and a verdict that left everybody just scratching their heads.
Right, like how do you even begin to unpack all of that?
We're going to try. We've got court transcripts, police reports, expert
Oh,
testimonies.
so we're going all in, deep dive style.
Absolutely, the whole 9 yards.
Awesome. So at the heart of this whole thing, we've got Jade Jenks and her stepfather, Tom Marmon.
Right.
But before we get into all the drama, let's set the scene a little. So Tom, he owned a butterfly farm.
A butterfly farm.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That's pretty cool.
I know, right? But he was dealing with some health problems, had been in rehab after a fall,
Yep.
and things weren't looking too good for him.
Yeah.
And this is where things take that dark turn.
Okay.
Tom is found dead, buried under a pile of trash in his own driveway.
Wow.
I mean, come on, that's like straight out of Nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, the investigators are immediately suspicious, and their attention turns to Jade, who was the last person to see him alive.
Makes sense.
But here's where it gets really interesting. During the investigation, Jade drops this bombshell.
Oh.
She claims she found, get this, hundreds of nude photos of herself on Tom's computer.
Whoa.
Yeah, and she says she never gave them to him.
Oh, so now there's possible motive.
Exactly. Suddenly the whole story flips, and you start to think, maybe Jade's the victim here, pushed too far.
Right, a victim pushed to the edge.
And in her testimony, she describes the shock, the feeling of violation, the fear. It's intense.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And she even reached out to this guy. She called him a fixer, a guy named Alan Roach, to help her figure out what to do.
A fixer. Like what? A problem solver.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
But hold on, there's another side to this whole thing.
Okay, there's always another side.
A friend of Jade's, this guy Adam Siplak, calls the police with a pretty chilling story.
Uh-oh.
He claims Jade confessed to him that she killed Tom.
Wow, hold on. So she told him she did it.
That's what he says. He claims she drugged him with Ambien and then suffocated him.
So now she's gone from potential victim to cold-blooded killer.
It's a crazy twist, right?
Yeah,
And it definitely muddies the waters.
for sure. So
Yeah.
what did the autopsy say?
Well, that's another curveball.
Yeah.
The autopsy report lists the cause of death as acute zerpidem intoxication.
Zolpidem, that's the generic name for Ambien, right?
Yep.
So hold on. He died from an Ambien overdose, but she confessed to suffocating him.
Yeah, that's a head scratcher, for sure. How do you reconcile those two things?
It doesn't quite add up, does it?
That's where those text messages come in. Remember that gold vine of evidence I mentioned?
Oh, yeah, the texts.
Jade's phone was basically overflowing with messages between her and Alan Roach, and some of them are pretty damning.
Like what?
Like I just dosed the hell out of him, things like that.
Yikes. That's not good.
And the prosecution really hammered on those texts, arguing that they showed a clear intent to harm Tom.
It's hard to argue. I mean, those texts are pretty incriminating.
Right. And it doesn't stop there. The prosecution also pointed to a bunch of purchases Jade made around the time of Tom's death.
What kind of purchases?
Like gloves, towels, nylon cord.
Okay, so like cleaning supplies.
Yeah, that's what Jade claimed, but the prosecution called it a murder kit.
Oh, wow. So they're saying she planned this whole thing out.
That's their argument, yeah.
So we've got conflicting accounts, suspicious texts, and a possible murder kit. Sounds like the stage is set for a pretty dramatic trial.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where we'll pick up next time. We'll dive into the trial itself, Jade's testimony, and how the jury ultimately reached that shocking verdict.
Can't wait to hear it. This case is a wild ride.
It is, and we're just getting started. So make sure you tune in next time as we delve deeper into the twists and turns of the Jade Jenks case.
Don't miss it.
All right, so we're back, diving deeper into the Jade Jenks case.
Back into the rabbit hole.
Exactly. And last time, we ended with Jade's sentencing and those claims of abuse she made against Tom.
Right, a whole new layer to this whole thing.
But before we get into that, we need to go back and tackle one of the biggest mysteries in this whole case.
The photos.
Yes, the nude photos. They're the foundation of Jade's defense, the supposed trigger for everything that happened.
A catalyst, yeah.
But the big question is, did they even exist?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, we may never know for sure. Tom's hard drive was never recovered.
So there's no actual proof.
Not from the hard drive, no. But investigators did find evidence on his laptop that suggests at least one nude photo of Jade was used as his wallpaper at some point.
Okay, so at least there's something backing up her story.
It seems so. And what's really interesting is that both the prosecution and the defense actually seem to agree that these photos probably did exist.
Wow, they agreed on something.
Yeah, it's one of the few things they saw eye to eye on in this whole case.
Okay, so let's say for a minute that the photos were real. How did Tom get them? Jade insists she never gave them to him.
Right, and that's where things get murky. There was some speculation that maybe he accessed them through Jade's personal devices, phone, computer, something like that.
Hacked into her stuff?
Maybe, but without the hard drive, it's impossible to say for sure.
So even if we believe the photos existed, does that automatically justify what Jade did? I mean, can you kill someone just because they have nude photos of you?
That's where things get legally and ethically complicated. Finding those photos, if they were real, that's a huge violation of privacy. But the prosecution's argument was that doesn't give you the right to take the law into your own hands.
I can see that. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly. And you have to remember those text messages between Jade and Alan Roach, the fixer.
Oh yeah, those texts were bad.
Even if they didn't have a concrete plan, they definitely showed an intent to harm Tom.
Like, I just dosed the hell out of him, right?
Yeah.
Hard to explain that away.
It really is. I mean,
Oh.
were those texts just venting, or was there something more sinister behind them? It's tough to say.
Right. And then there's the whole murder kit thing. The gloves, the towels, the cord.
Circumstantial for sure, but it definitely plays into the prosecution's narrative.
It does. But what about those missing strangulation marks? I mean, if she suffocated him, wouldn't there be some kind of evidence of that?
You'd think so, but the prosecution had an answer for that too. They brought in a medical expert who testified that strangulation can actually happen without leaving any visible marks, especially if the victim is unconscious.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not as straightforward as you might think.
So basically, they argued that she drugged him with Ambien, making him unconscious, and then suffocated him, leaving no obvious signs.
Exactly. It was a chilling scenario, and clearly the jury found it believable.
Let's talk about Adam Siplak for a second. The friend who claimed Jade confessed to him. His testimony was pretty key for the prosecution, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. But was he telling the truth? I mean, the defense tried to paint him as an unreliable witness, maybe trying to shift the blame or something.
Right.
But the prosecution presented him as a genuinely concerned friend who was just really disturbed by what Jade told him.
So it's his word against hers, basically.
In a way, yeah. And what's interesting is that neither Siplak nor Alan Roach faced any charges related to the case.
So they get off scot-free, and Jade takes the fall. Doesn't seem quite fair.
It's definitely another layer of complexity to this whole thing. And don't forget Brian Solomon, the guy Alan Roach supposedly sent to help Jade. He also claimed she confessed.
Wait, so multiple people say she confessed? That's pretty damning.
It is, and it likely played a big part in the jury's decision. But we have to remember, we're only getting one side of the story here.
Wow.
We don't know what was said in those private conversations, and we're relying on the word of these witnesses, which, as you said, the defense tried hard to discredit.
So it's all about perspective.
Exactly. And we'll never really know what truly happened behind closed doors.
Right. Okay, so let's bring in Jade's bombshell allegations from the sentencing hearing, where she accused Tom of years of psychological manipulation and inappropriate behavior.
Yeah, why didn't she bring this up during the trial?
That's a great question. Maybe she was scared, ashamed, didn't think anyone would believe her. Or maybe her lawyers advised against it, thought it would backfire.
It's possible, it's tough to say, but it definitely makes you wonder how things might have played out if she had shared those allegations from the start.
Would the jury have seen her differently? Would they have been more sympathetic?
Maybe, but it's also possible that bringing those allegations up could have backfired, making her seem like she was just trying to deflect blame.
It's a real what-if scenario, for sure. But it adds another layer of complexity to an already complicated case.
Absolutely.
So here we are, with a case full of twists and turns, a guilty verdict, a sentence of 25 years to life, and still so many unanswered questions.
It's a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah, it is. Did Jade plan to kill Tom? Was it a moment of panic after finding those photos? Were those texts a real murder plot, or just the ramblings of a woman who had snapped? We may never know for sure.
That's the nature of these deep dives. We examine the evidence, we analyze the arguments, but sometimes the truth remains elusive.
All right, so we've talked about the photos, the texts, the confessions, the lack of physical evidence. What are your final thoughts on this part of the case? I feel like my head is spinning after all that.
It's a lot to process for sure.
It is so many twists and turns, but even with that guilty verdict, there's just this, I don't know, this feeling like we're still missing something.
I get it. It's a case that really sticks with you, makes you think.
It does. It makes you question things.
Yeah. It does, and I think that's what makes it so compelling. It raises all these uncomfortable questions about privacy, about family, about the justice system itself, about how we decide what's true and what's not.
Yeah, let's unpack that a bit. Like those new photos, right? They're at the heart of this whole thing, this whole tragic story.
They are. They reveal so much about the relationship between Jade and Tom, about the power dynamics, about how our digital lives can be used against us in such harmful ways.
It's scary to think about how vulnerable we all are online.
It is. This case should be a wake-up call for all of us, you know? We need to be careful about what we share, who we trust, how we protect our digital footprint.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole family aspect, the step-parent, stepchild relationship, the age gap, all those layers of complexity.
It's clear there was a power imbalance there. And those photos, regardless of how Tom got them, they must have shattered whatever trust existed between them.
And sometimes those cracks in a family, they can lead to really dark places.
They can. In this case, it also makes us confront the limitations of our justice system.
How so?
Well, even with the jury's decision, we're left with so many unanswered questions. Did Jade plan to kill Tom, or was she reacting in the heat of the moment? Were those text messages a real murder plot, or just desperate cries for help from a woman on the verge of a breakdown?
Yeah, there's no easy answer.
No, there isn't. The lack of physical evidence, the conflicting stories, Jade's claims of abuse, it all adds to the ambiguity. It shows us that justice isn't always black and white, that truth can be a lot harder to find than we might think.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, that's for sure.
It is. In this case, it's been a roller coaster. We've explored the evidence, the arguments, the conflicting narratives, the human drama at the heart of it all.
We have. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts for our listeners? What do you want them to take away from this whole experience?
I think the biggest takeaway is the power of storytelling. The prosecution in this case, they were master storytellers. They painted a picture of Jade as a cold, calculating killer, and it resonated with the jury, even with those gaps in the evidence.
It's a reminder that we all create stories to make sense of the world.
We do. And sometimes those stories, they can have a profound impact on the course of justice. And for those of us observing these cases, we have to remember that we'll never truly know the whole story. We're just piecing together fragments, trying to make sense of it all.
It's a humbling thought, right?
Yeah.
That even with all the information we have, there's always more to uncover, more perspectives to consider.
Exactly. And that's what these deep dives are all about. Encouraging critical thinking, challenging assumptions, sparking those important conversations about the world around us.
Well said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit unsettling.
As always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep digging for those deeper truths.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive, another story that's sure to captivate you and leave you wanting more. Until then, stay curious.
And stay informed.